Sorry about that. Okay. Right. That's easier. Now you can see the mug. You can see the whole mug. I know. Isn't it great? Right. It's filled with coffee, not gin. So today I'm going to talk about the anatomy of the majuscules. We also have a sheet for the anatomy of the minuscules. There it is. I know it's in reverse. I'll flip the screen around in a second so that you can see what this is like. But as you can see, I have taken the time to go through quite a lot of things. We didn't write on the mug. It's screen printed onto. But enough of the mug.
We have plenty they can buy.
Angie has tons of them. If you need to buy one, just send an email. What was I going to say? The Majuscules, thank you. Sorry, it's 9 o'clock here and I've been up since 6 o'clock because my jet lag is really messing with my head. When I went to Reigate School of Art and Design, my last project, my dissertation project, was on Copperplate script, English roundhand script. And I started to look at the history of the script and why the script was so maligned in the calligraphy community. So those of you who have not been doing calligraphy for more than 15 years, 10 years, wouldn't really know this history of the script and the issues that those of us started using the script, started learning the script a long time ago, ran into with broad-edged practitioners. It's a little bit of a complex history, something which I took a little bit of time to explain in the manual. So that made me go to the Pepys Library in Cambridge and the Parker Library in Cambridge and a couple other libraries, the National Art Library in the Victoria and Albert Museum, the British Library in London, and a few other libraries in and around the country which held writing master copybooks. Since I've been traveling quite a lot, as I'm sure most of you have seen, I've been able to visit the Newbury Library and the San Francisco Public Library and the Letterform Archive in San Francisco, getting more information on these manuscripts, on these writing master manuals. Hello, Telmo. So I've scoured about 350 manuals. Over the 350 manuals, they've shown bits of this. Bits of the letter forms, like the wave stroke, which is that little wiggly stroke that most people tend to put at the front of an A or a W. The long swell stroke, which is the line of universal beauty, which is also called a swash or a shade in American references. So I've tried to encompass as many names as possible for the shapes, so that you have a better understanding of what these shapes are and how they work with different within the English roundhand tradition, which obviously leads to copperplate and engrossing and engraver script, but with a historical slant on it. So for instance, the waved stroke, I've given this term to a group of strokes that have the same kind of look. So I'm going to flip the screen. All right. So here we have the wave stroke. So I've decided to call this the angled wave stroke because there are different variations of this wave stroke. So we have the top, let me use Chris's pen because I really think it's like a wand. We have the top horizontal wave stroke, the reverse wave stroke, and of course Angie put this sheet together from all this information I gave her, and she called me up and said, we can't fit this. And I said, well, you have to find a way to fit it. I said, you have to find a way to fit it. And she said, okay, Okay, so she came up with this fantastic layout. So all the wave strokes are here. So we have the top horizontal, the reverse wave, the angle wave, the horizontal base wave stroke, the horizontal hair loop wave stroke, horizontal hair loop waved as you see them on the Z. So we have there, and there. And then a long inverted wave stroke or a long inverted wave curl. Now there's a difference between a curl and a curve. So this is a curl where the line of invisibility goes around itself. And this is a curve, as the writing masters did, which is just that. So it doesn't go up and around itself. We will post this sheet, so have access to it. So I'm going to go through some of these shapes. Let me just put your fears to rest here. I don't expect you to remember all of these names. Okay? What I expect you to remember is the shapes have names. This is a really important consideration because if you understand that the shapes have names and you understand that they also have direction, because all of these strokes cannot be made in more than one way. If you try to push the pen in a different direction, obviously you're not going to get the same shape. So for instance, Kerala. I love to go to Kerala. For instance, this is a hair stroke. It's called a hair stroke because it's thin. It's a hairline-like stroke. Angie said to me that she thought that we needed to put directional marks to give people reference and a letter so that you could see where it is. So, you guys have her to be thankful for this. I just put the stuff together. She's actually putting it together. So we put these directional marks on to tell you that this starts at the bottom and moves to the top. Well, if you are using a pointed flexible nib at 55 degrees, that can only be a hairline stroke. If you're using a pointed flexible nib at 55 degrees and you move this downward, well, that is obviously going to have a swell on it or a shade. So these directional marks, which are part of the ductus, I was just going to look for, I'm going to show you, this is one of the pages we've done. It's by no means finished because I decided some new stuff to it. So this is what the double page spread looks like. Obviously, it is really two of these. So what we've done is we have the copperplate letter within its grid, the ductus with these little marks to show you how to make it, angular confinement 1 for you to fit the straight lines around the curved letter, angular confinement 2 where you're given the straight lines and you have to fit a curve into that, elliptical confinement so you understand how it works within an ellipse and what's happening with the spaces themselves, and continuous movement, which is a real game changer because when you write this letter, you don't start up here. You have to move the pen from the baseline. It's like, we are people. Letters are people too. They sit on a baseline, so we walk on the ground. You don't just start at the cap height. You have to move from the baseline up to the cap height and then down to the whole movement is embedded in the letter. So that I'll go through at a later stage. Variable velocity, which shows us that different parts of the letters are written at different speeds. So we've highlighted where the speed changes. And Gainer-Goff has done the Roman capitals for these letters, which actually, so this is my markup sheet. So Gainer's done these. And those of you who don't know Gainer-Goff taught me calligraphy at Reigate School of Art and Design for 2 years. She's absolutely phenomenal. And she's left-handed. So these are the markup notes which we're going to put onto the manual. Oh God, tell me about Ryan. Which we're going to put onto the manual. And then we have a large copperplate letter with information as to some of the problems most people tend to experience with that letter. The parts of the letter that I just showed you on the anatomy sheet. Troubleshooting, so how to solve some of the problems. I think we flipped this around. What to look out for. So, for instance, with the D, with this B, it says weight on the downstroke, hairline, light with no pressure. So obviously, things that you kind of remember, but you forget. How to study it. So all of the letters in the manual are done with a pencil first. Once you've done all of them, you come back around and you do them with a nib. So that then goes through the second study. And then we have a list of things to remember. For instance, don't hold your breath. Lots of you like to hold your breath when you're writing. And some of you, I've heard some people say to me, oh, if I breathe, my letters shake. You're shaking because you're suffocating. You're not shaking because you're running out of air, or because you're breathing. You're shaking because you're running out of air. Breathe slowly and steadily, learn the doctor. So understanding this is really important. If you don't know the direction of the strokes, it's a problem. And then we have some variations. Of course, this bottom line has changed a little bit. So getting back to the anatomy of the letters, I don't expect you to remember all these terms. The reason why the terms are there, I can't wait either, Valerie, really. I would love to get this out to you, but I keep coming up with new information that's really quite important for people to remember and people to sort of actually work through the manual properly. What was I saying? Valerie interrupted me. I can't remember what I was saying now. I don't expect you to remember the terminology because it's up here. So it'll help you to remember that there is terminology. The terminology is there for a reason. It's okay. I was just kidding. The terminology is there for a reason, and that reason is this. Once the manual's out, we set up Unicorn Doodles. I love that name. We're going to set up a group on Facebook, like I have the PAScribe calligraphy and handwriting classes group. And you can post comments and say, oh, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that. Don't post a comment and say, I'm struggling with this without actually showing me that you've tried to correct it, because I will just ignore you. The only reason I will correct something is if I can see that you're trying. But by telling me, this is the letter I'm doing, but this is the part of the letter that I'm struggling with, that gives you some jargon to work with. It also means that you can communicate with other people who've purchased the manual in a really sort of academic way about problems you're having. If you don't have access to a video feed with that person, you can say to them, this is the letter I'm working on, but these are the parts that I'm struggling with. So this very technical structure of the jargon basically came out of the fact that I felt when I was teaching textualis quadrata, that knowing that you have a quadrant and a downstroke and a lozenge, which make up the entire script, helps you to determine how the script is written. So between that and the doctors, it gives you a little bit more information. So I'm going to do some writing to show you how this actually works. So just give me a little while, because I just need to set so that goes there, this goes here. Right. Okay, so unfortunately, because of how I've been holding the camera, I'm going to have to sort of, I'm going to hold the tool a lot flatter. So that you can see what I'm doing. Okay. So let's have a look at this here. So let's look at the construction of a letter A. So the first letter A in the manual is not a typical letter A. I've actually constructed the first letter A in the manual out of the hair stroke and the long swelled stroke. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use a hair curve. So the first letter A is now, sorry, the camera is right in front of my face. I'm really sorry about that. Let me just redo this. So I've done these two strokes for a reason. The whole script is actually the majuscules. I know a lot of you practice the line of universal beauty. But practicing the line of universal beauty alone is an incorrect way of practicing. And that is because the line of universal beauty cannot be practiced without actually practicing the upstroke first as well. I'm not going to turn the camera landscape because I can't actually see what people are writing and asking questions. So it's really difficult. Sorry. So when you do the upstroke, so I'm preparing to do the upstroke, 1 and 2. So I know with the line, with the connective stroke as I'm calling it, I know a third of the stroke is on the 55, whereas with the line of universal beauty, 2/3 is on the 55. So we go from there to there. So we go and 1, 2. And this is an essential difference. When a lot of you write, a lot of you get this problem. And your M's look like they're leaning over. The reason for that is you're not sure which stroke is which. So if you know that the connective stroke, which is at 60 degrees, and the line of universal beauty is at 55, the reason why the connective stroke is at 60 degrees is because only 1/3 of it is on the line, is on the 55. So there is an apparent shift in the stroke, which is here. And if you know that this and this are two different angles, your whole understanding of the A, the M, the N, the V, and the W changes. I talk about this quite extensively in the manual. And in fact, I'm just going to show you. I just want to show them the connective stroke. So I know the manual sounds really technical, but all this information is actually there for a reason. So Angie and I are just reworking the line of universal beauty. We've come up to the letter R. So we have both the connective stroke and we have the line of universal beauty, and how all these letters, these little markings, relate to these two lines. So it's quite comprehensive, and you know, this is one of the reasons we see the need to have some video feeds, because I don't want to scare you guys with all this information, but I think it is important that we change the way that we tackle this script. So where are we at? Let's see. So this. I also talk about the difference between the oblique and the straight holder. I'm not going to really do a demonstration here. Only really to show you that, you know, if you have if you have a letter T, and remember those of you practicing at home with the guidelines, this is the majuscule guidelines that I'm using, not the minuscule ones. With a letter T, never start the T at the top. Always start it one parallelogram down. Just trying to get this in the right place so that I don't, of course the the pen shaft is so long it's hitting the camera. So I'm starting here, I'm moving, I'm traveling, putting the tool down, pressure release, and I turn the pen so that it is parallel to the baseline. And so we're going all the way. Now it's really important you make this quite deep, because by making the stroke deep, you build up the right amount of momentum to contain the momentum, to slow you down, to give you the swell at the top. So that's really bad, sorry about that. I was actually trying to look at it through the camera. So what I've done is I'm using my system of continuous movement, and I've gone down, lifted, all the way up and over, and down, and up, and out. And so that's how my letters are so smooth, because I use this continuous movement. So I'm sharing this thing with you that will really help your letters to become different. So this is a waved stroke, and out. So this is actually, almost flat, but this I've measured to be at an angle of 5 degrees pointing downward. So there are all these angles embedded in the script, which is really wonderful, but it's when you see how the sacred geometry works within the context of the script, that's when things really start to change. But that's a whole other lesson. Right. So we have a little bit of time before I log off, because I need to get back to work. Is there any question pertaining to this that you want me to explain? Oh, no questions. That's great. Okay, bye. Is there anything in particular you really want to see that you're sort of struggling with and you think that this might help? No. Whoa, super. Hi, Oates, thanks so much. Where can you buy the manual? Once the manuals, we were aiming for the middle of November. It's probably going to be the beginning of December at this rate. There is a lot to put in. There's a lot new information. The letter D is an absolutely difficult letter to write. I think in this script, the letter D is probably the most difficult letter. I did do a little. The letters vary. The parallelograms vary for the height of the letters. Oh, that's good. Okay, no problem. I'll have a quick look at that, Karen. What kind of straight holder do I recommend? I like the holders that Chris Yoke makes. They're really sensitive and beautiful. There are lots of other wonderful makers like Hoang, who's in Vietnam. I think David Grimes makes some holders, but I'm not sure if he makes straight holders. Lindsay Hook makes some beautiful holders. I think David at Oblique Pens, but I'm not sure if he makes straight holders. My favorites are Chris's, because they're just so glorious. So the D. I start the D here, which is one parallelogram away from the end of the block of 8. And I go and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now the reason why I make the D this long is I'm going to show you something else that I've been working on. This is a 1/6 on This is a 6th on and Angie's just presented me with a color that we're using in the manual. This is a 6th on the right side of the line of universal beauty. This is a 6th on the left side of the bowl, because this because this here is where your eye is drawn to just about here. So notice this is at the axis of the script, which is 55. This is half the height of the parallelogram, so it's quite flat. And by doing the first part of the exercise, which is actually, and this is amazing. I mean, this is really, really phenomenal. The top of the D belongs to the S and the L group. So an S is that, and an L is that, and the D belongs to that group because the D is actually made by doing this stroke first and then that stroke. This is how you build the momentum to then confine the energy in the momentum to allow you to produce a long, flat curve, very tight turn, up and over. So notice this is at an angle. If this is too short, you end up with a big bulb here and a big bulge out there, which makes the letter quite fat. Stylistically, it is a type of letter form used in some of the other scripts, like engrossing and engraving. That's a different discussion. But this is a really important movement to get. So, you must know this exercise. Well, that is this exercise. And so you go 1 and 2 and 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 3 and 4 and up. And exhale. And out and tight and slow and around and down and up. And slow, apex hitting the line, and exhale and up and back down so that you contain that movement of energy. This is a really important area because this is just under the optical. This is in the optical center, the bottom optical center. So we have the top optical center, and then we have the mathematical center. So it's. I know it's a lot to take in, and I can only apologize for the amount of information I'm putting into this manual, but it's seeing the underlying structure of the geometry is amazing. Understanding that there is energy embedded in each movement is absolutely phenomenal. Yes, there is a mathematical version that I'm working on for Spencerian as well, but let's deal with the Copperplate script first. For those of you who think that this should be called English Roundhand, there is a reason I'm not calling it English Roundhand. I will do a post on that some other time. And somebody asked for some brush lettering. So it's really important that we understand how. Maybe I will give Angie the phone, because this angle is really difficult for me to work with. Look.
Hi, guys.
So guys, say thank you to this amazing lady, because if it wasn't for her, this manual would not be happening. Right, so if you stand up.
Yes, this way.
And so you need to, if you stand over here, so we need it to be about there. Okay.
Got it.
All right. So let's look at this. What am I going to do? So let's again use the angle stroke. Now, the letters in the manual do not have leading flourishes, they are all plain. The flourishes are dealt with after. So let me get under here. There you go. So this, you might need to tilt it just there. There we go. Because the light, oh my God, it's such a production, this. So again, you know, for the brush, I'm using the brush hold that I've developed, which I will share with you, which is a real help, especially if you're left-handed or if you have a awkward sort of hold. So the wave stroke is, it's not a fast stroke. It's also part of the flourishing structure, which I look at in the manual. So we have a W,
The grid pages are available on your website.
so yeah, the guidelines are on the website, which is paulantonioscribe.com. All you have to do is go to the button that says manual and just fill in the contact information, and you can download them from there. Now, the other thing about this is you can use this in a slightly more contemporary way. So you can make the wave stroke like this. So by understanding the anatomy, the names, the jargon that I've come up with for the shapes of the letters, and don't forget a lot of this, maybe 30% of the jargon is historical. It comes from Writing Master Copybooks. 30% of the jargon comes from Writing Master Copybooks. Sorry about all the angles. So I augmented the jargon by adding terminology to it. So, for instance, there was something called an inverted hair curve, which is where the curve comes up from the bottom and goes around. And there are two strokes called a direct and an indirect stroke, the minuscules. So I decided to make an indirect inverted hair curve. I'm also using some technical stuff like, you know, triangles. So I've come up with an explanation as to why when an A, this is a good example. So with the W, this W doesn't stay above the line, it goes over the 55. And there is no term that I know of that describes this accurately. So I looked at the names of triangles. So we have an obtuse triangle, and I've called this a curved obtuse triangle. Is that what I called it last night?
Curvilinear.
A curvilinear, an obtuse curvilinear triangle, because two sides of the triangle are actually curved, but they have to be obtuse because they need to go back over the bottom angle. So I can only apologize for how complex this is. All right, listen, I'm going to go. Thank you very much for taking the time to spend with us and look at the anatomy of the majuscules, and we will keep you posted on the information for the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, for the manual. It's a little bit early. And I will post the image of the anatomy of the majuscules on our social media content, but not right now. So give us a little time because we still need to finalize some bits with it. All right, thanks very much. Have a good day. Bye.